everybody. My name is Megan. You're watching Miss Megan Knits. This is the podcast episode 4. And I have lots of fun stuff to show you today. So let's get started. Today has been a day, but I'm all better now. Everything worked itself out in my favor, well, sort of. And we're all good. So I have some great news for everybody. First, we're going to talk about some of my designs. I have 3 new designs up on my Ravelry page since I last podcasted. 3, you say? I was only expecting 1. I know. I'm just giving you all the bonus content right now. And 2 of them are free. So let's get started talking about those. Okay, so the first pattern I want to talk about is something I actually wrote over a year ago, I think. I don't have a date on it, but it was a long, long time ago. And they're called Vanilla Socks for Dad. You may have seen this on Ravelry's Hot Right Now, second page. So excited about that. Basically what this is it's a sock pattern with notes in it, so it's kind of like a tutorial. You can see right here I have like the instruction, and then I have my notes in this other font. They're only written for men's size 11 shoe because I only made these custom for my dad to fit his feet perfectly. And I wanted to write it down for myself so that I would remember what I did. But I found it in my computer when I was going through it the other day. And I said, hey, why not just put this up on Ravelry for free, because I wasn't expecting to make any money off it anyway. We'll see if people like it, and people seem to really like it. It got like 160 downloads, so I'm really excited. Hopefully people are enjoying it. Hopefully lots of men with size 11 feet are getting nice socks. They're men's size 11 only, sorry about that, but that's just how it is. My gauge is 8 stitches per inch. I know a lot of people have their favorite sock gauge that they knit at. This is 8 stitches per inch. For me, that was size 2 needles, but that seems a little weird when I posted it on Reddit, actually, after I made the socks. People are all like, you're using size 2 needles and getting 8 stitches per inch? And I'm just like, yeah. I don't think I knit that tightly, but apparently I do. Oh, and the heel, as you can see from the stripes, is a heel flap and gusset design. It is a French heel done in a, I believe, slip stitch heel with a garter stitch edge, which I really like the garter stitch edge instead of a slip stitch edge on a heel for picking up stitches. I think it's much easier. It's also worth noting that this pattern was written with DPNs in mind, as those are my preferred needles for knitting small circumferences. But if you know how to adjust a pattern to a magic loop or 2 circulars or whatever your favorite combination of needles is, feel free to do so. It's just that most of the helpful hints and tricks I have in here are written for DPNs because that's what I have. It's also a great first sock pattern, I would think, or maybe a second sock pattern because they have all the helpful tips in there. And that's completely free on Ravelry in my Ravelry store. I will link it. The next design I'm going to talk about is the one you all were expecting, the slouchy bear hat. I have some pictures of it. This picture didn't print very well. You can't really see the texture, but these pictures came out really nice. Just took those in my overgrown backyard. There's a stone wall back there. It's a pretty cool stone wall. Some old farmer left there 100 years ago or something. And it's got 2 different pom-poms on it. You can see it from 2 different angles. That's Bear, by the way. That's his head. I didn't put his face in any of the pattern pictures, but if you go over to my project page where I actually made the hat, there's some pictures of us together and stuff, so it's pretty fun. I'm not going to talk at length about exactly all the details of this hat because I did talk about it in my last podcast, so if you are interested, head over there. It's a slouchy hat with a chevron pattern and a fold-up brim, and you can change the fold of the brim to change the slouchiness of the hat. $1.99 on Ravelry, you can get this hat. One of the reasons I made this hat was for my boyfriend. He had all the design ideas, and I just had to basically knit it up, so got free design inspiration out of him. It's pretty cool. This next pattern that I have, the 3rd out of 3, is for a guarded heart scarf, is what I'm calling it. And what it basically is it's an easy peasy, super quick, giftable scarf in an easy texture pattern that beginners can do, advanced people can do. It'll work up super quick, and it's super easy to do. The reason why I call it the guarded heart scarf is because I designed it originally as the first thing I ever knit for my brand new boyfriend, who showed an interest in my knitting for the first time ever. I'd never had a guy show interest in my knitting before. Like, I asked him, can I knit anything for you? And he said, I'd love a scarf. So I'm sitting there going, oh my goodness, I don't want to put too much grand stuff into the scarf because what if he doesn't like it? What if he and I don't last as a couple? What if, you know, what if? So what I did is I designed a very simple scarf. You can see the picture of it draped over my jacket here. It can be masculine or feminine. It's a great gift scarf. It was designed to be gifted. And it's called the Guarded Heart scarf because I didn't put my whole heart into it because I was a little bit scared when I made the first one. But he absolutely loves his. His is navy blue. It's a little beat up right now because he keeps it in his car, but he loves his. And I remember him exclaiming to me one day in the winter, he's like, if I wear this scarf, the cold doesn't get into my jacket. It's like, yes, that's the point of scarves. Congratulations. He is so cute, but I'm really proud of it. So the pattern also includes modifications instructions. So you can use any weight of yarn. You can make it any width. If you want a really wide scarf, you want a really narrow scarf. I include instructions for how I designed this scarf using the stitch pattern so that if you wanted to knit it in, say, a worsted weight, it would take you longer, you would need more yarn, but you could totally do it with the instructions included in here. And this is also free. So if anybody is interested, it's kind of a thermal stitch. This is the front and back of it. So this is the right side and this is the wrong side, but I think they both look good, which for me is important for a scarf pattern. And it's got a slip stitch selvage edge, which is really easy to do. Even if you're a beginner and you've never slipped a stitch before, it's not hard, don't worry. I have instructions of where to put the yarn, front or back. I don't remember off the top of my head if it's in front or back, but it's in here. So if you download that, you can get that, also free. And it's so cool. I looked today, somebody else is making a project out of that scarf pattern. And that's so cool because I've never had a project made by somebody else with one of my patterns before. I was really excited. So now we're gonna move on to my finished objects of the week. And my first finished object is the Guarded Heart scarf. I worked up, this is an exact copy of the one I made for my boyfriend, except this one is red. He picked out the yarn. We were at the yarn store together. He went to the yarn store with me. Sorry, I'm fangirling a little bit. I really like this kid. And he picked out this really red color because we were thinking of maybe using this as a donation scarf. Red is just a really good color for that kind of thing. Suits everybody. And he said it was good for, we were thinking of giving it to Knit Your Bit, a place where you mail in scarves and they send them to veterans. So I was thinking maybe doing that with this scarf. I wasn't sure. And he said red would be a good color for a veteran that's very patriotic. And it's a bright color, but it's still masculine. Or feminine, if you want it to be feminine. It worked up super duper quickly. It took me less than a week. And I was working on other projects at the same time. And one of the reasons it worked up super quickly are because of these things. These are US 17 needles. These are the cheap kind you get at the craft store. They're made of plastic. They're weighted though at the tips. And the tips are kind of a weird shape. They're blunt, but they like curve in. So I didn't love the shape of the tip when I was working on it, but they're cheap needles. They're lightweight, they're easy to carry around, and that's good because if these were solid wood or something, they'd be heavy. These are US 17s. You could go even higher on it if you want a looser drape of a scarf, but this is a pretty drapey scarf. It's got air in it, which I think is really good for insulation and keeping people warm. But if you went too high with the needles, you'd get more of a lacy effect, which might be cool, but isn't really what I was going for. The yarn I used was this Stitch Studio by Nicole Bell. This is the same yarn I used for Bear's scarf when I first made it for him. I used the navy blue one for that. This is red, obviously. I think the colorway is just red. It's called red. This is super cool. It's 100% acrylic. It's machine washable and dryable. It gets softer with every wash. It does get little, not pills, but little strings off of it eventually, but if you got a gleaner, you can take care of that right away. And there's enough in one ball to make a whole scarf, which is weird with super bulky yarns. Just because super bulky yarns usually come in like 100 gram skeins, and you need like 4 of them to make anything substantial with it. So this is a nice big skein. I know I didn't use the whole thing. I used 157 grams of this out of 300 grams. So I actually used a little more than half. So I could make a second scarf out of this, and it would just be a little bit shorter. I used 157 grams. I got a 60-inch scarf, which is standard scarf length for men and women, adults. But I found out something really cool when I was Googling how long a scarf should be, because I didn't know how long a scarf should be. I just make it until it's long enough, right? Apparently, a good measurement of how long a scarf should be for a person is their wingspan. So if you stretch your arms out wide, stretch, stretch. From your fingertip to your fingertip should be how wide your scarf is. That's a good design. And if you're doing it for a child, that'd be really helpful because, you know, kids grow and get different sizes. And if you can just have your kid stretch their arms out and you measure it, exactly the perfect size for your kid size. So that's pretty cool. Super cuddly, super squishy. I like it. Next thing I wanted to talk about is something you'd been seeing from me for a while, which is the Funky Circles blanket. It's on my lap right now. Here it is. The whole thing is basically like this. There's a black border that goes all the way around, and there are a bunch of squares, 80 squares, like this. So the pattern I used was Squaring the Circle by Shelly Husband. I used an H hook or a 5mm. This circle yarn is Bernat Premium in the Bittersweet Variegated colorway, which I think is discontinued. I looked for it online last podcast to try and link it, and I couldn't find it, so I think it might be discontinued. I did find it at Job Lot, so it's probably discontinued. The teal around the edge is Karen 1 pound, in Aqua. Aqua is the colorway. And then the black border is Studio Classic by Nicole in the colorway Black. These were all budget-friendly yarns. I'll tell you how much I paid for the whole blanket in a second. I used economical yarns for this. I think I paid $2 per skein for the Job Lot one and something reasonable for the 1 pound, and it comes in a giant 1 pound skein. And then I think the black was 4 for $10 skeins of 200 grams each. So that was a pretty good deal I got making this blanket. I will tell you, it is super soft. It wasn't, when I was making it, I was a little worried it was going to become one of those itchy, scratchy blankets that no one uses. Put it through the washing machine in the dryer once, pinned it out, steamed it to make sure everything got all flat and there weren't any lumps. And then, like, it was just super soft and ready to go and cuddly, and I've taken naps with it, and it's great. Took the nap test. It worked. So I will note that I joined these squares using the join as you go method. I had made, I think, 20 squares before I decided I wanted to join as you go. So some of the joins are a little bit wonky, like that one. Is that one wonky? No, that one's fine. Where's a wonky one? This one's a little bit wonky. This one right here. Because I was trying to work in squares that were already completed with the squares that were still being made, and it worked out okay. Some of the joins are a little iffy, but I think it's beautiful, just as it is. The border, I had a long time contemplating this border. I put the whole thing together, and I had laid it on my living room floor, and I said, and I stared at it for a while. And my family stared at it for a while. Until finally somebody suggested, I think it was my dad, putting a black border on it. And then I polled everybody. Does the black border look good? So then I did a round of double crochet in the black border, and then I threw it back on the living room floor, and I stared at it again, and I went, I ended up doing 2 rounds of solid black. These are all different yarns, by the way, from different brands. Bernat and Karen, I think, are both yarn inspirations, but the Nicole one is AC Moore's house brand. I was not sure they'd mesh together very well. I was thinking they'd be different stiffnesses, but again, one run through the washer and dryer, and everything worked out beautifully. So that's how I plan to care for this from now on, is just running it through the washer and dryer. And maybe I will glean it if it needs to be gleaned, but I don't see any pills on it yet, so we're good. Oh, so I have some interesting data on this blanket. This blanket took 1,333 grams of yarn total, which is 2,410 yards, which is about 1.364 miles. Over a mile of yarn went into this blanket, and it's only Afghan sized. I told Bear that stat, and I was like, oh yeah, you know, I put a mile of yarn into this blanket, and then he gets to my house to come see it, and he's like, it's not very big. I guess he was picturing something huge, you know, and it's fairly large, Afghan sized, but it's not bed blanket sized. If you look on my project page, which you can find me if you find me on Ravelry, I usually put links to my project page there, because that's more interesting than my profile, let's be honest. And you'll be able to see pretty close up to the top. You'll be able to see a picture of it on a double bed, so you can kind of get a size reference. My cost for making this blanket, which is accurate down to the gram and down to the cent. So I figured out how much I paid for each skein, what fraction of each skein I used, did the math to figure out how much I paid for it. Everybody ready? $13.12. Now that's not counting how many hours of time I put into it and if I were to pay myself for the time I put into it or anything like that. But the materials, $13.12 for this whole beautiful blanket. And it's soft and it's nice and it's colorful and I love it. And so if anybody tells me I can't knit with cheap yarn or crochet with cheap yarn, then they're wrong. Okay? I like this. I like being able to have a blanket for $13.12. You probably couldn't buy a blanket this nice for $13.12. So I'm pretty excited. My next FO, in case you're curious, this one's still on my lap. I've been keeping cozy with it because the air conditioner is on full blast. It is apparently 72 in here, but it does not feel like it's 72 in here. So I have my jacket and my blanket. My next finished object is something else you've been following, my San Francisco socks. Check them out. This is so cool. So the pattern I used for this is a modified version of the My First Toe Up Socks pattern by Susan B. Anderson. I did follow the Craftsy class, or the blueprint class, it was Craftsy at the time, to knit a pair of toe up ankle socks in worsted weight. Liked the pattern, so I chose this, but what I did was I changed the heel. So what they did is they called it an afterthought heel, but they had, I would call it a forethought heel, because when they got to the heel part, they put waste yarn in and then kept going. And that left a really hard to close gap in the side that was a little bit awkward, for me at least, and I didn't really like doing it that way. So I decided to learn how to do a cut and heel. I did a practice pair of socks before this to make sure I wouldn't mess up my nice yarn from San Francisco. But this is a cut and heel, so check that out. I made the 56 stitch size, which I believe is the smallest size because I have kind of narrow feet. Apparently, I measured them. The yarn. So this main color yarn is Comma Chameleon Yarn Co. Hardy Sock in Phosphorescent Rose. And I actually only used 36 grams of it, which I think might be because if it's a light fingering weight instead of a fingering weight yarn, it went farther. I'm not exactly sure, but these are like, this is a 7-inch leg right here. These aren't shorties or anything, but I only used 36 grams. And then the heels and toes, which are kind of stripy, are Houndstooth Fiber Arts Twinkle base in the colorway Moonlight, and I used 13 grams altogether. I used size 2 DPN needles. Yes, you can do Judy's Magic Cast On DPNs. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You can also pick up a cut and heel on DPNs. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I'm calling these the San Francisco socks because I bought the yarn for these socks while on a trip to San Francisco. I bought them at Firebird Yarns on Haight. I'll link their website. But yeah, super cool. Comma Chameleon Yarn Co. is, I think in Minnesota or Montana, one of those. So they aren't local to San Francisco, but I bought the yarn in San Francisco. I took it home from San Francisco with a souvenir. So I'm calling them my San Francisco. Oh, my data on these socks. So I used 233 yards of yarn in these socks. The price for these, and I did the same thing I did on the blanket. I calculated what much I paid for the skein and then what fraction of the skein I actually used. It's accurate down to the gram and down to the cent. And I paid $18.38 for these socks, which isn't that expensive, I don't think, for a really nice pair of socks. I think I did pretty good. I also have enough yarn left over to make an entire second pair of socks, not even shorties, like a whole pair, if I have a different contrast heel and toe, because I don't have enough of the Moonlight to do a complete contrast heel and toe. But if I found another color to do the heel and toe, I could do another pair of these socks. So that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna do it just yet because I have other exciting things. I went, ooh, squirrel, and forgot about my scraps. So these will sit in my scrap bin. Not the socks, the yarn will sit in my scrap bin for a little bit until I figure out what I want to do with it. Maybe a memory blanket, I'm not sure. These socks are actually the first socks I'm going to use sock blockers. If you saw my Knit Picks haul, I blocked them by washing them in eucalypt, the lavender scent, They smell really good. And sticking them on sock blockers. So that's how I blocked them. That's how they are right now, in perfect display mode. They're nice and soft, probably because it's merino, probably because I washed it with Eucalyptus. It's just all good. So that's all the FOs I have to show you. I'm going to move on to whips. So the first whip is probably the only whip you've all seen before. It is my Wharfdale sweater. This sweater is the sweater I'm knitting. Right now I'm knitting the back though, so I'm not doing those fancy cables yet, but I will. So this is the back piece. This green marker down here, you can't see it because it's curling, is where I was last podcast. So I have all of this done. You can see on camera my mistake, that little line right there. This line right here. What that basically was is I dropped a stitch down at the bottom there, didn't notice it, knit, 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 knit all the way up to the top of that line, and then went, oh no! So I just picked it up and stretched the stitches out a little bit and carried it up. So now the stitches around there are a little tight, but I'm gonna block it out, and it's in the back. No one will care. I don't care. I really didn't want to have to rip out and reknit all the way or try and secure that one without leaving a hole and then do an increase somewhere to make sure I had the right number of stitches. I didn't want to fuss with all that. So I took a crochet hook and had Google play some Mission Impossible music, and I carefully picked up all the stitches all the way up. What else did I want to say about this? So the needles I'm using for the ribbing at the bottom, I'm using US 2s, straight needles actually, but it's working out okay. And then for the body, I'm using US 4s. These are the Knitter's Pride marbles, in case you're wondering. They're flexible, which I really like because I think it's easier on my hands and my wrists. For the yarn, I'm using Fiberco Luma. There it is. This is a blend, 50% wool, which I think is merino, 25% cotton, 15% linen, 10% silk. So it has a bit of a bite to it, which I think is from the linen, but I think it'll soften up as I wash it, I hope. This isn't the kind of sweater you'd wear without something underneath it anyway, so I'm not that worried. So that was this one. That's all I have to show you so far. So this is my third Plarn mat. Same one I was working on last time. I'm going to show you the progress I've made. I apologize for any rustling. So for this Plarn mat, I've decided to use white bags and gray bags in small-ish stripes, just because I think that looks good. And I'm probably going to border it with a different color, maybe brown. Our local grocery store recently switched to brown plastic bags, so I think I'm going to have brown to border it with. Or maybe bright blue, which is what the local grocery store used to have. That might be a cool color to border it with. But anyway, here it is. I haven't been super motivated to work on it lately, so I'm hoping that by showing you guys this every couple of weeks, it will keep me motivated to make progress on it somewhat. So here it is. If you want to know what this is, it's a sleeping mat for the homeless that I am making out of plastic bags. If you want to learn how I turn plastic bags into yarn and how to make a mat like this, then see the video description below, where I will have a link to a video of mine called All About Plarn, I think that's what it's called. You can watch it and learn all the details there. I'm using a Q hook to crochet this up. So last podcast I showed you my little bluebird, and I told you I was working my way through the blueprint class on Amigurumi Woodland Animals with Stacy Chalk. So I'm on my second animal. It's a work in progress. My second animal is going to be this bear. So cute, right? Except mine is going to be a polar bear because I had a bunch of white yarn in my scrap bin, and that's what I wanted to use. So here it is. Here is his body. It's not stuffed yet or anything, but that's the body shape, basically. And then I'm working on his head, which is the same as the body. So that's pretty darn cool. I'm actually proud of it. It doesn't seem to have the tension issues I had with the bluebird and that hook or anything. I'm using a 4.5 millimeter hook, which I believe is a 7. I'm not sure what that is, US. Sorry. This yarn is the Studio Classic by Nicole. I had it left over from Christmas stockings I made. So I have 2 balls of kind of scrap of this, and that's what I'm using. I'm also using Barocco Love It in black, which I can show you for the nose and for the eyes. I'm doing baby safe eyes just because I don't have toy amigurumi eyes, and also because maybe this will go to a baby. I don't know. We'll see. Baby safe eyes. The other parts I have to make are 4 limbs. They're all the same. 2 ears, a snout, and a nose. And everything's going to be white except for the nose and the eyes. They're going to be black. Amigurumi is not as hard as I thought it was. Obviously the really complicated ones are hard, but that bear is just single crochets really, and some increases and decreases to make the shapes. So I think it would be really hard to design an amigurumi, and I have a lot of respect for people who do, but following the patterns is not that hard. So in case anybody needed the extra push to try it, definitely try it. That bluebird pattern is a great place to start because all you have are the bird, the wings, and the beak. And you learn all of the skills you need to learn. My next work in progress is something I talked about in my Knit Picks haul video when I got the yarn to make this. It is this Scania shawl by Caroline Weens. I'm using US 10 needles, and I'm using Knit Picks Capretta Superwash. This is the shawl. So this right here is, the shawl is done in 4 sections basically. So this section is an edging, a slip stitch edging. This section is the body of the shawl, which is going to keep getting bigger. This section is a faux cable border, which I can stretch out for you so you can see it better. And yeah, I like how it looks different in the different colors. My mom pointed that out earlier. And then this right here is garter stitch, but it will not be garter stitch when this is finished, because when it's finished, we're going to unravel the garter stitch, and it's going to be fringe. Easy peasy fringe that you made just by knitting the garter stitch every time. That's what I've got. You hold 2 of the colors of yarn together. So you can see I have 2 held together here. This one's a little harder to see that there's 2, but there's 2. And then 2, and then 2, and then 2. Marled like that all the way through. So let me show you the colors I'm using. These are all Knit Picks Capretta Superwash, which is 80% merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon. I'm trying this yarn out for a pair of socks that I'll talk about later. I think we're going in darkest to lightest because that's the way the pattern has it. This shade is Pinot. I'm trying not to blow it out here. Pinot. We have Loganberry. This is a good representation of it. We have Magnolia. That's a good representation of it. Moonstone. And we have Lilac. All of the colors except for Lilac are heathered. Lilac is a solid. And you can hold different ones together. Let me see if I can hold them all together for you. You can hold different combinations of them together to get different looks. And that's basically what the designer is trying to use in her shawl. So there's some darker spots, there's some lighter spots, there's some spots with high contrast, there's some spots that kind of blend together and you can't really tell if it's marled. It's really cool. So I'm really looking forward to keeping knitting on that. It was a really fun pattern, or it is a really fun pattern. It did challenge me a bit, which I like. I like things that are challenging me. I'm on a challenging me spree, as you'll see with my next whip. I'm really challenging myself. I didn't understand the pattern until I did the setup rows. So if you purchase it and you download it and you're trying out the pattern, do the setup rows, just trust the designer, do exactly what is written. And then rows 1 through 4 are actually written out all the way for you. And you can follow those rows 1 through 4 to make the whole shawl if you want. But really, I found once I got through the rows 1 through 4, I understood what was happening, and I was able to start memorizing the pattern. Don't be scared if it looks really complicated. And at the beginning, she has all these simplifications of it that look really complicated if you haven't done it yet. Do it. Do the setup rows. Do the rows 1 through 4. Get it all under your belt. And then when you see things like, oh, you know, cable repeat, you know, you'll know where that fits in the shawl and what you're supposed to be doing. I proactively memorize the faux cable. So my little trick for doing that is when I'm still looking at the pattern and reading it, to guess what comes next. Close my eyes and guess. Or look at the work and guess. And then look and check and see if I'm right. And I feel like that helps me memorize things that are going on faster. which I really wanted to do for this shawl because I didn't want to be looking at the pattern and jostling papers and everything so much. I wanted to just be able to look at the section that tells me how many rows to do and what color combination, and I would have the rest of it memorized. And I have that so far, so we're good. I am worried about the bind off. The bind off is scaring me a little bit. It's you do some short rows and you do an I-cord edge, and that's just a little bit terrifying for me. I've never done an I-cord bind off before, but we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. It'll be great. My last work in progress is my first Intarsia. I got a request from Bear's mom to make llama socks. Socks with llamas on them, not socks made of llama, because that would be easier. Socks with llamas on them. And I found a pattern with socks with llamas on them, but it's Intarsia, and I've never done Intarsia in my entire life. But I really, really, really want to look good in this scenario. So I figured I'd learn Intarsia. Plus, it's a knitting skill I haven't had, and it's good to learn, right? Always good to learn. So I went to Blueprint, and I did the class Intarsia Basics and Beyond with Sally Melville, who I find hilarious. She's just funny. I like her. I want to hang out with her. I want to sip tea and knit with her. I really do. And so I made this, which may not look like much, but it's Intarsia, and I'd never done Intarsia before. And also the ends are stitched in. She showed us how to secure the ends and deal with the ends when you're working with Intarsia, because there's a lot of ends. So I thought that was pretty cool. So then I decided to start a project, and always, always, always a good idea if you're learning a new skill is to start with a washcloth or a dishcloth, because they're square and you can do whatever you want to them, right? So grab some cotton yarn. If you're trying to learn how to do cables, maybe not cables and cotton. Cables and cotton are a little tricky. If you're trying to learn how to do a crochet stitch for the first time, if you're trying to learn how to do whatever, then make a washcloth size. And then, at the very least, if it fails, you'll have an ugly washcloth. So that's what I'm doing. From Knit Picks, it's the Perfectly Preppy Washcloth by Emily Ringelman. I'm using a size 7 needle. Let me pull this out, if I can, with all the ends attached to it. So, this washcloth has a heart-shaped pattern in a background of stripes with a border of white. It was advertised as a good pattern for learning Intarsia, so that's what I went with. I think I'm doing okay, but I'm kind of wondering what I got myself into. So the white is Knit Picks Dishy in the colorway Swan. I bought a whole cone of that to help me get rid of some cotton mill ends to make it look a little nicer. And then the blue and the pink are cotton mill ends that I bought for real cheap a long time ago. Trying to get rid of them. That works. I have some tension issues, especially around the color changes and around this edge, or this edge. This edge has a big hole in it. I don't even know how to fix that. So it's a little bit wonky, but I'm hoping that as I perfect my technique and finish the dishcloth that I will have learned Intarsia. And maybe I can try another dishcloth, maybe I can try the llama socks, you know. But I'm hoping to learn Intarsia this way. So why Intarsia? I already said that. Special request, llama socks. She wanted them fuzzy, but I'm not sure if I can make them fuzzy. I can make them soft. And that's why I'm looking at the capretta. I was hoping the capretta would have a little bit more of a halo to it so that I could consider that fuzzy, but it didn't. But now that I'm knitting with it in this Gagne shawl, it's starting to get a little bit fuzzy. So we'll see if I end up liking that enough to knit socks with it. The pattern I found for llama socks is the Komoteyama socks by Lori Ann Romsberg. I bought them. I bought the pattern. They're toe up in the round. The Intarsia is done flat. The cuff is done in the round, and then you seam up the back, if that makes sense to anybody. It didn't make sense to me until I read the pattern a bunch of times, but that's how it's constructed. I am a bit confused at the pattern, at the Intarsia a little bit, but I'm going to put faith in the designer and just trust her that she knows she's doing probably better than I do if she's designing an Intarsia. So I'm just going to work with what she told me to do. And the goal is to have them done by Christmas. So we will see. It is July now, so we'll see if I'm done by Christmas. That's everything that was in this notebook. Well, not everything in the whole notebook, but you know what I mean. Thank you so much for watching me babble. I hope you have a great day. My day got a little brighter after doing this video, so I hope your day gets a little bit brighter after watching it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you later. Bye!